Today's episode is brought to you by Inksighted. You brand you.
Do y'all know what time it is? Do y'all really know what time it is? It's time to grab your popcorn, grab your best beverage. It's time to relax your ears. Wrestling season has returned, baby. Ooh, yeah! That's right. And it's time for your main event. Coming down the aisle, we have the one, Bobby Wrestles. And he is accompanied by the beautiful Mia Moore. This is the main event. Welcome to the All About Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. On a Wednesday, midweek, we are back with some interesting topics. I'm your guy, Bobby Wrestles, and thank you. Welcome to the All About Wrestling Podcast, where we talk everything wrestling and impact sports. Folks, I wanted to get your opinions, all right, about some topics, specifically Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso for SummerSlam. Looks like it's going to happen. Are you guys interested? What are your thoughts? Also, rest in peace to Droz. You've heard the news, the unfortunate passing of Darren Drozdov, who sadly passed away this week. He was 54 years old. And if you remember specifically, Darren Drozdov was injured. He was paralyzed. Initially a quadriplegic, however, he gained his feeling and his movement back in his arms. So he was confined to a wheelchair. So we're going to break that down. I did do a poll with regard to who's at fault for Droz's injury. I spoke about this briefly maybe a year ago, specifically about who was at fault, what caused the incident. Droz actually went on record and stated what he thought caused the accident to happen. And as you can see, I'm sitting here, I'm fresh off the 4th of July with my patriotic gear, courtesy of Inksighted. And before we get carried away, I do want to bring light to the fact that we are having another T-shirt giveaway. All right, so right now, currently, as it stands, that's our will. We have EW1, Tantalizing Tony, and Fandito. All right, those are our current contestants. If you're unfamiliar with the prize wheel, we give out custom T-shirts to a winner. We spin the wheel. Whoever's selected, they get to receive a custom T-shirt. Now, we don't know exactly what T-shirt we're giving away. However, if you have some ideas, feel free to reach out to us. All right. So to get into this wheel, to get your slice, it only costs you $1. You Cash App Inksighted. There's the information there on the screen. Okay. And, of course, anyone that donates, if you give a super chat to the show, you're automatically entered, for your chance to win a custom T-shirt from Inksighted. All right. So how you guys feeling? Before we open the phone lines, I do want to break this down. All right. Shout out to Mick Thompson. Shout out to Gary. I see you're back. He says he has good news to share today. We're interested. All right. Jey versus Roman. SummerSlam 2023. I kind of feel a little bit disappointed. We're getting force-fed with an internal civil war, which we thought was over at Money in the Bank. However, it's not over. There's also been reports of an internal calling for the Bloodline story to be done with. Now, my prediction previously was the fact that I believe that this story comes to a close a little over a year from today, SummerSlam 2024. Okay, because there's some people that, with respect to Roman Reigns' reign, he has to surpass. All right. So those are my predictions. But there's a call for the Bloodline story to end. How does this story end? Tell of the tape, Roman Reigns. He's 38 years old. Jey Uso's 37. Roman's 6'3", 287 pounds. Jey Uso 6'2", 242 pounds. Do I think it's going to be a great match? Yes, I think it will be a great match. Jey Uso surprises us. He doubts ever being a mid-card competitor. And a lot of fans may doubt him because he's smaller in size. He's traditionally a tag team wrestler. But we've seen this before. We've seen this with Shawn Michaels, who was a tag team wrestler. He became one of the greatest wrestlers ever to do what he did. In my opinion, he's in my top 5. Shawn Michaels, top 5. If you've seen the show before, you know exactly where he stands amongst those top 5. All right, so Reigns versus Jey Uso. Also, Droz. All right, so Droz, he passed away sadly. The information that I have from the broken story from Ringside News. TMZ reported that his family released a statement concerning Darren Drozdow's passing. They were obviously heartbroken over the sudden tragic loss. It's very sad. They said there are no words to convey the deep sense of loss and sadness we are feeling right now. We'd like to extend our deepest appreciation to everyone, all of his fans, teammates, colleagues, and friends for all the love and support he received over the years. Now, Droz was never forgotten about, okay? Thankfully, he lived a very comfortable life from what I could sense. Of course, the incident that happened with him becoming paralyzed, remember this, it was 1998 where he debuted. And a little backstory on Droz, he was actually given the opportunity to become a third member of the Legion of Doom, if you're unfamiliar. He also had the ability to puke on people. And of course, Vince McMahon greenlighted the idea and had him puke, which today, I don't think it would even come on TV. They would even allow that. But who's at fault for his injury? All right, Droz versus D'Lo Brown. This happened in 1999, 1 year after his debut at WWF SmackDown. This was October 5th, 1999. Now, Droz stated, he went on record and stated, look, this happened because he had on a loose shirt. If you remember, D'Lo Brown went and attempted to powerbomb him. Somehow it appeared that he lost grip and Droz ended up falling on his neck, straight down, bow. Got injured, got paralyzed. He was carted from the ring. So I wanted to know what you guys thought. I did do a poll. Who's at fault for the Droz injury? And the majority says neither are at fault. However, a large group thinks that it was D'Lo Brown's fault. Now, D'Lo Brown, of course, he was devastated. He didn't want to wrestle again. He got advice from some legends, some key veterans behind behind the curtain, and he got back into it. Of course, he spent a lot of time being an executive or some type of managing role within WWE. If you guys are exactly familiar, you can always send that in the live chat so we can talk about it. But yeah, very, very sad story with the passing of Droz. May you rest in peace. Phone lines are open. If you guys want to call in and talk about either Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso or Droz, who's at fault? I'd like to get your opinions. Folks, thanks for joining us today. And how was your 4th of July? Mine was very interesting. I actually posted a video on Instagram at All About Wrestling Podcast on Instagram, where we're actually out in the field. We elected to do a suburban fireworks display this year. We didn't drive into the city. Last year, if you remember, there were bullets flying. And we didn't want to be a part of that. So I'm actually on vacation for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, folks. So I have a lot of time to sit here and talk wrestling. And we have some interesting topics between this week and the next. We have an upcoming investigative show where we do some research. I'm going to ask you guys, and maybe this will help get your minds ready for this. Is a deep dive we're going to do. And I did a poll for this, and I'd love to get your reaction on this. What type of fan are you? As we're going to talk about that. I have 4 different types of fans. I also have my own definitions. And you can, when you come in, you can talk about that once we do that show, what you think, these categories are, where you fall within these categories. Me, myself, I'm an objective fan. All about the facts, the data, the paperwork, the legitimacy of a wrestler, of matches. That's me. All right, so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Goldberg versus Bret Hart. The potential and a calling for Goldberg's retirement match to involve Bret Hart. I'm not crazy, all right? I'm not crazy. And of course, there are some fans who believe that this will be a good match. Nevertheless, we're going to talk about it. I'll tell you why I do not believe this is a good match. We're also going to talk about Jade Cargill. All right. If you're familiar with our steps on Instagram, on social media, you know where we're going with regard to these topics and our questions concerning them. Now, phone lines are open, folks. If you want to call in, the number's on the screen, at the bottom of the screen. Anytime you call in, I'll stop talking. I'll stop rambling. But you know me, I have no problem talking to myself. Now, Roman versus Jey Uso. Is the Bloodline story getting old? Are you tired of the Bloodline story yet? Now, I know from personal experience, from friends, family, they're not done with the story. All right. But in all due honesty, it has to come to an end. How will it come to an end? What will be the final nail in the coffin? When will Roman Reigns lose his title? Of course, I told you before, I believe he's going to be done in August of 2024, SummerSlam. That's where I think it's going to end. All right. EW1. All right. He has a comment about Bret Hart. He says, Bret Hart is my favorite wrestler of all time, and I do not completely blame Goldberg. I blame the horrible bookings at WCW which forced that match. Great point, EW1. I kind of agree with you, and I'll explain why. If you're unfamiliar with this match, some may say, and some have said, that the match between Goldberg and Bret Hart caused Bret Hart to finish his career. It ended his career. He took a super kick, ended up having a concussion. Terrible match. The chemistry was not there, of course. It was terrible. We're going to talk about that, all right? We're going to talk about that within a few days. All right, so very good point. Thank you, EW1. Back to this Roman versus Jey Uso. Now, we've seen Roman versus Jimmy, and now Jey. Me personally, Jey is my favorite Uso. Who's your favorite Uso? Jey has it. He has the microphone skills. He's got the look, the energy, the charisma, the ability, the athleticism. Call it what you want. He's got it. Jimmy's got it too. But if you compare them side by side, clearly Jey is the favorite. If I'm wrong, you can chime in. But what's the chance of Jey Uso defeating Roman Reigns at SummerSlam? I don't think he has a great chance, and we know that. This is Roman's reign. He's the top guy in the wrestling industry. Do you want to see this match? Is it appropriate? In terms of being objective, yes, it is appropriate because of the way the story is going, and due to the fact that Jey Uso pinned Roman Reigns for the 1, 2, 3. Keep in mind, Roman Reigns has not been pinned since December of 2019. And I remember specifically because around that time, I was moving, and this was around the time AEW did their show, their debut on TV. But Jey Uso did something that hasn't been done in years. So yes, it's appropriate for him to get this match. Will it be for the title? I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts? Jey has always been, he's always been the most consistent of the two. Jey has been their rock. How about that? How about that? Great point. And if you've seen Money in the Bank, you saw when Jey Uso paid homage to The Rock. If you caught it with his punches, and then he did like that, and then he punched. That was tribute to The Rock. All right. He is consistent, and he is their version of The Rock. EW1 says he only sees that match happening depending on what happened Friday. Okay, so you don't think it's set in stone? I think it's set in stone. There's been multiple reports already claiming. In fact, Dave Meltzer even went and said, this is a match that's going to happen. I am very interested in seeing what's going to happen on Friday. Of course, wrestling doesn't stop here. If you're a big fan of Friday Night SmackDown and live streams, folks, check out my guy. Tantalizing Tony will be live Friday for a SmackDown watch along. All right, so make sure you catch him. And it's going to be interesting. I do want to see what's going to happen with this Jey versus Roman, with the bloodline situation in general. There's also been speculation and rumors that Paul Heyman is going to leave the bloodline. He's going to go with another wrestler. I would really like to see Paul Heyman with Austin Theory. I think that would be amazing. By the way, I'm a huge fan of Theory. I love his work. I love his ability. Be on the lookout, But Roman versus Jey. We're getting this for SummerSlam. Are there better opponents? Are there any opponents? At some point, we're going to have to recycle a lot of these matches, but we cannot be completely naive in the fact that there are wrestlers that are waiting in the wings. They're waiting. They're waiting to come back. Keep in mind, Randy Orton. What better debut or re-debut for Randy Orton to show up at SummerSlam? Edge. Edge is around. When does he come back? Is his feud completely over with the Judgment Day? Big E. What's the status on Big E? Does anyone know? At some point, he's going to make his triumphant return. There's a lot of people that have been injured, people that have left without a trace, not knowing what's going to happen. Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman. At some point, we have to bring in some new fresh meat, some competitors for the tribal chief. This is a civil war. We get it, but at some point, the civil war ends. Does it end when the bloodline story ends? I think so, because it's all about the bloodline. However, when does Roman Reigns, when does his story end? When does he drop the title? And against who? All right, so I've rambled enough. Again, folks, make sure you hit us up for that prize. Cash App, $1. It's all it'll cost you. All it'll cost you, folks. There's our current competitors: EW1, Tantalizing Tony, and Fandito. Our moderators automatically get in there. So Fandito, he's our super moderator. He's in there. If you're interested in becoming a moderator, make sure you email us at allaboutwrestlingnow@gmail.com. There you have it. Get in on this contest. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in a new family member on Friday. EW1, that's a bold prediction. But who would they bring in? Who would they bring in? Is there anyone left for them to push up to that level? Now, if they bring in a new family member, this story has to go on. It has to go on longer to see how this all plays out. That means the Civil War continues. Be very interesting. All right, folks. Any last comments? I know Gary was in the chat. I don't know if you're still there. You said you had some good news to share today. And by the way, folks, if you're unfamiliar with Gary, he called in our last show. He was actually a witness to the Ryback stalker situation. He called right after the stalker called in. All right, so he's lurking. He's in the shadows, folks, and he has a very interesting perspective when it comes to wrestling, and I appreciate that. But it's going to be very interesting. These next few shows, these next few weeks, our road to SummerSlam is now. It's now. All right, folks, it's been fun. I just wanted to pop in here and put some interesting perspectives out there in the wrestling world, okay, for you guys to ponder. And perhaps within a few days, we're going to see what happens with the Bloodline story. I'll follow your lead, EW1. You said that we're going to see what happens Friday, and then it'll be a shoe-in whether we're going to see Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns. Till next time, keep your mind on wrestling.